Thanks for joining in to our second episode of Extreme Reloading. Today we're going to continue on where we left off last time. And if you watched that episode, we prepared a bunch of Sig Sauer brass for our 9mm Luger and cleaned that brass and did a little comparison of a couple of different cleaning solutions, namely Hornady and Frankfurt Arsenal. You might want to check out that video if you're wondering which one turned out better. Well, in today's episode, we're going to be taking that brass that we prepared last time and we're going to load it. I'm using CCI number 500 small pistol primers and 3 different charges of unique powder. That is 5.0 grains, 5.2, and finally 5.4 grains. And I'm using 2 different bullets. I'm using my kind of standby, tried and true baseline Hornady XTPs, 115 grain bullets, and we'll be comparing those bullets to my extreme bullet this time, the Lehigh Extreme Penetrator, also a 115 grain bullet. But before we can prime any of these cases, put powder charges in any of these cases, what we need to do is we need to spend some time setting up our taper crimp bullet seating die. And if you've never done this before, this is going to be a good chance for you to catch up and learn this process. I'm going to give you some of the tips and tricks that I've been using for years to make sure that you effect a very good taper crimp on 9mm or other similar semi-auto pistol brass. So let's take a close look at setting up a brand new RCBS bullet seating die for the 9mm Luger. That is a taper crimp style die. Well, we're going to take a little bit of time today to set up this RCBS, this taper crimp bullet seating die for the 9mm Luger. Now this is a brand new die that I purchased specifically for these extreme bullets, and very specifically, let's say, for the Lehigh Extreme Penetrator 115 grain bullet. Now the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take this fully prepared case, but no primer and obviously no powder in it, and I'm going to use this essentially as a dummy case to get this seating die set up just right. In all other ways, this is a case that is identical to all the others that I'll be using for this loading. Now we're going to run this to the top, and now I'm going to take this die and install it into the press. Now I'm going to turn it down just until I feel some resistance. We ought to make sure that we don't actually feel the resistance from this lock ring. There. Now I've felt resistance right here, beginning to feel resistance right there. So I'm going to stop. Now I've purposely left the actual bullet seating stem out of this case. You don't really have to do that. In fact, you probably shouldn't do that. But I have done that so we can see down inside here to the point where that crimp actually is making contact with the case itself. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to back this die out 1 full turn. Now what I like to do when I'm doing this step is I like to get kind of a checkpoint. For instance, using this word here where the L starts for Luger, I'll make sure that we come all the way around and the L in Luger comes back to this position, and we're backing it out. And there we have it. And now, holding this in place, I'm going to drop the lock ring and temporarily tighten the lock ring. Now, I don't really care for these lock rings. This brass little lock itself, this hex set key or set screw, it wants to strip out so easily. So be really, really careful when you're tightening these. One of the things that I frequently do is I will replace this entire lock ring with the lock ring that Hornady uses, and I've actually had much better success with that. Okay, now we're going to lower this, remove the case, and we're going to put in a bullet. This is our Lehigh Defense, as I said, the 115 grain Extreme Penetrator bullets. That is it right there. What we're going to do is we're going to insert this. Of course, that's one of the reasons why you expand or bell out the case mouth. And what we're looking for is we want to achieve a combined overall length of this entire cartridge, once it's finished, of 1.100 inch. So I've got my calipers, digital calipers, micrometer out here, and that'll help us achieve that. Now, of course, I need to insert the seating stem, and with this RCBS kit, you get one and you get two seating stems. I'm going to choose the bullet seater that best fits the Lehigh Defense. What I mean by that is, let's take another one of these bullets, and with this stem right here, let's see how it fits. That's not too bad. I can feel it making a lot of contact right on this edge here. Let's see how the other one fits. This is set up for more of a round nose bullet. That's not too bad. Actually, I kind of prefer this because I can feel that it's making contact on the tip. And I think I'm going to get a better seat without marring the bullet if I use this one. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just barely get this started. That's enough. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn down this seating stem until I feel it make contact with the bullet that's in the case. You can see we're going in a little ways. It feels like I've made contact about there. And now it becomes a very incremental or trial and error process. I'm going to lower this. I'm now going to lower this, about 1/8 of a turn. Raise the press. And now I'm going to start checking or watching for that combined overall length. Let's see where we are right now. I can pretty much guarantee you that we are way too long. That's 1.197, 1.196. So we need to drop it quite a bit. Let's go ahead and do some of that right now. Maybe turn it good full turn. See where we get to. Repeat that process. .153, so we shaved off 4/100ths. .102. Now we have to be a little bit careful. We're just moving it by the thousandths, so a very slight adjustment. See how that goes. That moved to the foul. Let's go a little bit more again. Boy, that's pretty darn good. Now, this may seem counterintuitive, but what we're going to do is we're going to unscrew the seater plug a turn or two. I think we'll go ahead and do about one full turn. And then what we're going to do to effect the taper crimp is we're going to move the body of this die downward. We have to remove or release this a little bit first to effect the taper crimp. Now the taper crimp is actually, it's important to make some measurements of this. And what we're doing is we want to make a measurement at about where the base of the bullet would fit into this case. So let's say about here. We're going to measure this. About there is good. And we have 0.376 of an inch. And now we're going to measure it again right at the mouth. Now remember, these cartridges here, headspace at the mouth, and this is now identical to that main body. But that's not what we want. We want it to be 1/1000th to 2/1000ths less or smaller than that main body diameter. So here we go. We're going to back this out one turn. Now we're going to loosen this lock ring. Raise the ram. Now we're going to, once again, turn this down until we feel more resistance. Okay, there I felt it again. Now, it's going to feel a little bit different than when we first made the initial settings, and that's fully expected. We're going to go ahead and turn it a little bit more until we get some pretty firm resistance right about there. Let's see where we're at. Now again, we remember the 0.376, measuring right at that mouth, and we are at 0.3745. Okay, so we can see that we have reduced the size. We've applied a taper about 2 to 3/1000ths from about this point to the mouth. Now the next thing that I like to do to really give this another test before we call it finished is I like to use this. This is a Lyman handgun case length gauge or case gauge, and as you can see we have a slot set up for 9mm Luger. If we place this in here, what we should see is that the 9mm Luger sits flush with this gauge, and it looks really good as is. If we applied any more of a taper, it would seat further and further in, and that would not be a good thing at all. We don't want to apply too much crimp to this thing. So that's looking pretty good. And if you're just getting started at this, or you're just wondering, is my taper crimp really good? Is it just a little bit too much taper or whatever? Apart from all the little tests we already talked about, what I like to do is take a factory load. Now this is a Federal, the old lipstick I call it, type of bullet stuck in here, those Syntec bullets, and I'll drop this one into the gauge and compare it. And what we're seeing is that it's really, really similar. Let's do that again. Pretty much identical. That's the factory. And that's ours. Okay, now I'm satisfied with the taper crimp that we've applied. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten this lock ring, insert our case again with the bullet, raise this up, and now we have to finish up the bullet seating depth one more time. We're going to insert this seating stem and the lock ring for it until it makes that contact. No more than that. We don't need to seat it anymore. We're happy with all that. That is done. It's a good idea to check all this once again now that we've made all those final adjustments to the die. Combined overall length. That is fine with me. 1.100 we were shooting for. We're at 1.099. That is excellent. Now let's go ahead and double check this taper crimp. 0.3778. And we should be about a few thousandths less. 375. 2.5 thousandths, 3 thousandths less. Finally, one more time into the case length gauge or combined overall length gauge. That's looking real good. Okay, I've just put my first set of charges in here. I've got a starting charge of 5.0 grains of unique. As you can see, I've finished loading one, topping it all off. It is completely ready to go. Nice looking cartridge. Let's go ahead and do another. Looks good again. I like to give these a test again, especially as I've just gotten this thing set up. I really like how these are seating. Should be no problem whatsoever. Now what I'm also going to be doing is I've chosen 10 cases. These are Remington Peters brass, and I'm going to be loading these for comparison with Hornady XTP. Also 115 grain bullets, but it's a different bullet. Now the overall length of these two bullets is very, very different. Both of these are 115 grain bullets. You can clearly see that the Hornady XTP is a lot shorter than the Lehigh Defense Extreme bullet, 115 grains also. What that means is that while the round may have a little bit longer combined overall length, it won't be that much longer in combined overall length. Rather, what's going to happen is more of this bullet is going to intrude into the case itself. Think pressure cooker effect, and what you get is higher pressures for the same powder charge because the case capacity, what I call the burn chamber, has become smaller when you're using this Lehigh Defense bullet in contrast to the Hornady XTP. So just because you're loading 5 grains or 5.2 grains or whatever of a given charge with a 115 grain bullet doesn't mean you can change bullets and expect the exact same performance, the exact same pressures as you did previously. So I actually have another bullet seating die, a Hornady custom grade bullet seating die that is set up to use this, so I don't have to make any additional changes. I can use my RCBS die for the Lehigh bullets and my Hornady die for the Hornady bullets. Now we're going to go ahead and work up this load. As I already noted, we are starting with 5.0 grains. of unique. I'm loading 3 rounds of each. Then I'm going to load 3 rounds of 5.2 grains, and finally 3 rounds of 5.4 grains. I could probably push it a little bit further than that. 5.9, according to Lehigh, and the folks I talked to over there, would be the absolute max, and they stressed that that's the absolute max. So I could push it a little bit further, but I'm not. And the reason why I'm not doing that is that this bullet is designed to be a subsonic round. And pushing it more and more and more, higher powder charge, is going to push it into the supersonic range. In other words, 1100 feet per second. We want to keep it below that to get the performance as designed for this bullet. I've been shooting 5 grains also, very mild load with the XTP, so I'm going to work it up sequentially here. 3 rounds of 5.0 grains, 3 rounds of 5.2. I got 4 cases over here, so I'm going to go ahead and do 4 rounds of the 5.4 grains, all obviously with unique powder. So I'm going to get this finished up. We'll take a look at how the final results, the final rounds, look at the very end. Now here's our finished rounds, and now we're really looking at almost identical combined overall lengths. So what that clearly illustrates is the additional amount of case capacity that's occupied or intruded by this Lehigh bullet. Let's take a look at it from another angle. Okay, so there's our lineup. And I've placed a few of the Lehigh bullets over there so we can clearly see that intrusion into the case. And we're going to see some different pressures and different velocities on these. That's my hypothesis, and I think that's really what's going to happen. I actually don't anticipate pressure problems, but better safe than sorry to work these things up correctly.